Are the Turkish armed forces fighting for Hamas? The images of a group of people heard speaking Turkish attacking an Israeli army tank brigade caused a huge echo all over the world. After the incident, in which a large number of Israeli tanks were destroyed, eyes were once again turned to Ankara. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was received quite coldly during his visit to Turkey, stunned the whole world with his statement after his talks with his Turkish counterpart, Hakan Fidan. Is the U.S. support for Israel coming to an end? Turkey, which has long been known to take steps to normalize relations with the Israeli government, has abandoned this attitude as of October 7th. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's calling the attempted attack by Hamas self-defense and announcing that they have canceled all negotiations with the Israeli government have raised allegations that the Turkish army may soon become involved in the war. In this process, despite the warnings of the United States, which is seen as Israel's biggest ally in the war, President Erdogan's failure to withdraw his statements of support for Hamas also caused great tension within NATO. In addition, the Turkish government announced that it had recalled its ambassador to Israel, citing the humanitarian tragedy experienced in Gaza as the reason for this decision. In the face of successive moves from Turkey, Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Lior Hayat accused Erdogan of supporting illegal organizations. Turkey's position on this issue is quite clear. Turkish President Erdogan, explaining that they had warned Netanyahu many times to stop the Israeli army's attempts to attack Gaza, said, "Netanyahu is no longer someone we can talk to." Meanwhile, the images that appeared only a few weeks after Erdogan's statements, in which he also said that the Turkish army was ready for military and humanitarian support for the Palestinian people, changed everything. The presence of some Turkish-speaking people in the back of a mortar attack on an Israeli tank brigade in a video released by the Hamas organization caused a huge echo all over the world. During the attempted attack, in which about 20 Merkava model Israeli tanks were destroyed, a person was seen clearly speaking Turkish, while Hamas militants were preparing mortars. This situation brought to mind the allegations that the Turkish army was secretly sent to Gaza to support Hamas. In the process, retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who served in the U.S. Army for many years, further raised concerns when he touted Erdogan as the only man with the capacity to destroy Israel, and claimed that Turkish soldiers would join the war in Gaza in any case. As it is known, in recent days, the Israel Defense Forces have begun to organize ground operations against northern Gaza. The Israeli army, which has been sending a large number of soldiers, tanks, and armored vehicles to the borderline for a long time, was planning to completely destroy Hamas in the Gaza Strip, thanks to these ground operations. However, Hamas, which is trying to block the Israeli army's advance through tunnel lines that reach kilometers in length, recently claimed that they had repulsed the IDF back to the Israeli borders. The Israel Defense Forces claimed that this withdrawal was a conscious move and that they did not have any weaknesses. The whole world predicted that after these statements, the Israeli army would launch a much bigger offensive. But the facts have not been like that at all. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after his visit to Turkey, demanded that the Israeli military put on hold its attempts to deconflict attacks on the Gaza Strip in accordance with a humanitarian pause. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, who recently decamped to the Turkish capital Ankara, met with his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan. However, the fact that only Ankara's deputy governor came to greet Blinken when he got off his plane showed once again that Turkey intends to protect its attitude towards the United States and Israel. During a long-term meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Blinken evaluated the crisis in the Gaza Strip and stated that the United States has launched a large-scale effort to further increase humanitarian aid convoys for the Palestinian people. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, on the other hand, considered the Israeli military's operations against Gaza as a disproportionate use of force and once again called for an immediate ceasefire. Blinken was also expected to meet with Turkish President Erdogan after the meeting. However, it is claimed that Erdogan refused this meeting. After a decently tense visit to Turkey, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who met once again with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, spoke about the need for a humanitarian pause in Gaza. This call for the Israeli army to stop its offensive operations for a while made the Tel Aviv government very uncomfortable. After the United States, Israel's most trusted ally since the beginning of the war, requested a ceasefire of sorts, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that a ceasefire was out of the question and only small pauses could be allowed. Turkey, on the other hand, found the U.S. offer of a humanitarian pause insincere and once again stated that they could become a guarantor country for a ceasefire. Turkish President Erdogan, who suggested that the short-term pause of the Israeli army will not provide a tangible solution on behalf of the Palestinian people, said that the Israeli army should urgently withdraw from Gaza. Turkey's National Intelligence Agency chief Ibrahim Kalin announced that Turkey is continuing negotiations with both Hamas and Israel to ensure a ceasefire as a guarantor country. Erdogan claimed that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has lost the support of the people. Erdogan's rhetoric against Israel has also had a huge impact on the Turkish people. Since October 7th, anti-Israel and anti-war protests have been held in many critical regions of Turkey, especially in Istanbul and Ankara. Law enforcement officers had to intervene after a group started throwing stones at the building, especially protest held in front of the Israeli embassy. President Erdogan, who once again made a public statement on this reaction of the Turkish people, said, "It is impossible to completely break ties, especially in international diplomacy. The only person responsible for the regional conflicts in the Middle East is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What he needs to do is to stop this crisis by taking a step back." Despite the U.S. saying that Turkey should apply pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, President Erdogan stated that the hostage crisis would be resolved only if Israel also released the Palestinians it had detained. A few days after this announcement, the IHH Humanitarian Relief Foundation, which originated in Turkey, organized a protest with a large number of Turkish citizens. Citizens departing from Istanbul organized a march with Palestinian flags in front of the Incirlik U.S. military base in Adana. Turkish citizens, who have started to implement a boycott against Israeli brands in recent days, organized pro-Palestinian protests in front of many companies and organizations that are alleged to support Israel at the country's borders. In some areas, these organizations were directly attacked with stones and sticks. Erdogan, on the other hand, continues to call for a ceasefire to end the turmoil both in his own country and in the Middle East. Do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu's insistence that they will continue to fight in response to Turkey's pressure on the United States to ensure a ceasefire could lead to Israel losing its biggest ally? Don't forget to share your ideas with us via comments and follow us to see the future already.